You know, my dad says you guys are full of crap.
Jason.
Well, some people have trouble believing in the paranormal.
No, he just says you guys are full of crap, and that's why you went out of business.
Song.
The new Ghostbusters 2 might not be a game you've played, and there's a good reason for that. It never made its way to the United States. While North America received a different, less well-received Ghostbusters 2 game, fans across Europe and Japan were treated to this hidden gem developed by none other than HAL Laboratory. Yes, the same HAL Laboratory that gave us the Adventures of Lolo trilogy, which, let me say, that is underrated, Kirby's Dream Land, and Earthbound. Earthbound, guys. So let's dive in and find out if this version of Ghostbusters 2 is worth hunting down. Ghostbusters 2 on the NES tells the story of the movie, but with its own twist. You take control of the team as they try to stop Vigo from taking over New York City. Unlike its more obscure North American counterpart, the new Ghostbusters 2 offers a clear, fast-paced, and faithful interpretation of the film's events. The story stays true to the movie, capturing those memorable moments, but gives you the freedom to swap between your favorite Ghostbusters, Peter, Ray, Egon, Winston, and even Louis Tully, aka Rick Moranis.
You look fantastic in this.
Jumping into the gameplay next, and the gameplay is simple yet effective. You control two Ghostbusters at once. One to trap ghosts with a proton beam, and the other to capture them using a ghost trap. HAL Laboratory struck the perfect balance with this two-character system, offering quick, arcade-like mechanics without ever feeling too complex. It's easy to learn, but surprisingly satisfying to master. You'll be chasing down ghosts in familiar locations from the movie, like the courtroom and the museum, giving the game a strong sense of atmosphere even for an NES game. Jumping now into how this game looks and performs visually, and the new Ghostbusters 2 isn't pushing the NES to its limits, but it does a great job at capturing the spooky and fun vibe of the Ghostbusters universe. HAL Laboratory's signature style shines through with clear character sprites and detailed environments that bring the New York City hotspots to life. It's obvious this is the same team that worked on the Adventures of Lolo series. The visuals have that same clean, charming aesthetic, and the game runs smoothly with no noticeable slowdown, even when things get hectic on screen. Let's check in now on the sound design, and the audio design delivers a fun and fitting soundtrack for a Ghostbusters game. While it doesn't reach the iconic level of HAL's latter works like Kirby, Earthbound, or Super Smash Bros., the sound is still very enjoyable. You'll hear catchy tunes that match the action, and a few familiar sounds from the movie. Though there are no voice samples, the Proton Pack and Ghost Trap sound effects are distinct enough to keep you engaged, adding to that classic 8-bit charm. Now, let's talk about who this game is really for, and the new Ghostbusters 2 is definitely for fans of the franchise and retro gamers who love quirky, overlooked gems. If you're a fan of HAL Laboratory's early NES titles, like Adventures of Lolo, you'll appreciate the puzzle-like nature of managing two Ghostbusters simultaneously. And anyone who grew up in the 80s or 90s will appreciate how faithfully it captures the spirit of the Ghostbusters movies. And again, anyone who grew up then, you guys know that movies that had video game adaptations were not good, thanks to developers like LJN. So anytime you did actually get a good video game based on licensed IP, it was a big deal. And that's another reason why it's so unfortunate that this game never came out in the United States. Next up, let's discuss the game's overall content. Content-wise, the game is on the shorter side, like a lot of NES games, very typical of that era. There are a handful of levels, but no significant replayability beyond trying different Ghostbusters combinations. However, the game's tight design and nostalgic feel make it a fun trip down memory lane for anyone willing to seek it out. Now, let's talk difficulty, and the game strikes a good balance in its difficulty. Some might find it to be pretty challenging, but that was the case with a lot of NES games growing up. I think the big challenge comes from managing your 2 Ghostbusters and avoiding hazards rather than overwhelming yourself with enemies. Some boss fights require quick reflexes and planning, but none feel unfair, at least for the NES era. The pacing is quick and the game can be completed in one sitting, making it accessible for casual gamers while still offering a challenge for completionists. Now, let's talk about the game's charm and emotional impact. And while the new Ghostbusters 2 isn't as emotionally impactful as games like Earthbound or as adorable as Kirby, it has a charm all its own. The game is a slice of late 80s, early 90s nostalgia. HAL Laboratories once again shows their knack for creating enjoyable, easy to pick up games. There's a certain satisfaction in busting ghosts with this quirky 2-character system that feels different from anything else on the NES. Plus, being able to control Rick Moranis as a Ghostbuster, that's a nostalgic fan service moment if there ever was one. Jumping now to the fun factor, and the fun in the new Ghostbusters 2 comes from its simplicity. It's a lighthearted, fast-paced action game that doesn't try to do too much. It's perfect for short bursts of play, especially if you're a fan of the movies, and the charm of HAL Laboratory's design combined with the easy to understand mechanics make it a game that's hard to put down once you start. Now let's discuss the game's legacy. So why didn't the new Ghostbusters 2 make it to the United States? Unfortunately, licensing issues and the disappointing reception of the other Ghostbusters 2 game in North America probably sealed its fate. It's a shame because the version of Ghostbusters 2 is leagues better than the one American audiences got. As a HAL Laboratory game, its legacy is often overlooked, overshadowed by Kirby and Super Smash Bros., but it's a true hidden gem in their early catalog. I think for retro enthusiasts, it's a must-play, and for Ghostbusters fans, it's a fun piece of lost media that's worth tracking down. Alright guys, now it's time for my final thoughts, and the new Ghostbusters 2 is one of those games that, if it had made its way to the United States, could have been remembered as a classic. With its simple yet engaging gameplay and HAL Laboratory's signature charm, it stands out as one of the better movie-to-game adaptations on the NES. For fans of retro games or anyone who loves a good, nostalgic romp, it's a great addition to any collection. HAL knocked it out of the park, and it's a shame that more people haven't had the chance to experience it. Thanks guys for busting through this review with me. If you enjoyed discovering the new Ghostbusters 2 and want more retro game goodness, don't cross the streams, hit that like button, and subscribe to Thunderstash Gaming. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Did you know about this hidden Ghostbusters gem? Or is this your first time hearing about it? And remember, I ain't afraid of no ghost or retro games. Don't forget to check out my podcast, Nintendo, for all the latest news and discussions on Switch 2. Until next time, keep those controllers charged, and remember, you're never too old to play video games.